My name is Doug Commons. Welcome to my shop. This time I'm going to be making a router plane. I wanted to make one of these for quite a while, and I had some materials around the shop. This is made out of maple. These handles, I'm not exactly sure what these handles are made out of. They're actually from some old chair spindles. We'll hear more about that later. And then a 10mm Allen wrench. It's been ground and sharpened. So stick around. I'll show you how I made it. First thing to do is to flatten one face of the piece of material, in this case maple, that's going to make up the body of the plane. Next, square one edge to that freshly flattened face. Because the piece was too small to send through the planer, I planed it to a thickness of 1 7/16 with a hand plane. The last thing to do was to trim up both ends. Okay, I went ahead and laid out where I'm going to drill holes. I didn't think it was really worth your time to sit here and watch me just lay all this out, just to let you know that I've got a hole here and a hole here I'm going to drill to remove the bulk of this material in this area here. And then I've also got a hole here that's going to be drilled to receive this Allen key. Now this is a 10mm Allen key, an Allen wrench, and that's what I'm going to use as the blade for this. And then one other hole that I laid out for would be where where the thumb screw is going to be, so it tightens up against the Allen screw. So I'm going to go ahead and drill these out on the drill press, and then I'll be back. Okay, up to this point, we've taken our block of hard maple and we've machined it to a certain size, a little bit longer than 6 inches, about 6.5, maybe close to 7 inches, and it's 4 5/8 wide and about 1 inch and 7/16 thick. We've created an opening with a Forstner bit. I used a 1 7/8 inch Forstner bit and remove material in between. Put a hole in here for the actual iron or the blade that we're going to use, which is going to be a 3/8 Allen key, Allen wrench, whatever you want to call it. And we've drilled and tapped a hole for the knob to be used to tighten and hold the Allen key in place. Now the next thing I want to do is I'm going to use the table saw, and I'm going to shape this edge, and I'm going to put it on an angle, and I'm going to use my ruler here it's going to have an angle of about that much. Okay, I don't really know what that angle works out to be. I just struck a line across that right there, like that, and then came up 3/8 of an inch from the bottom, struck a line, and then just connected those 2 points, and it gives me whatever that angle works out to be. Okay. Same thing with the. Then after that's done, I'll create angles on both sides here at about like that, about 30 degrees, somewhere around there. Okay, and that will pretty much take care of the shaping. So let's move on to that. Well, I'll tell you what, cutting that on the table saw was probably one of the most precarious things I've ever done. Okay, I've got this set up on my bandsaw. I've already cut one angle, which you can see here, and I'm preparing to cut the other one at 30 degrees on my bandsaw. I had this set up a different way on my drill press in a pretty complicated way. This seems to be a little bit simpler. I'm just taking it real slow and creating that angle. It's 30 degrees, somewhere thereabouts. It's not really critical, but I'll have some hand work to do once I get everything done. So I'll let you know what's going on here in a little bit. Okay, mission accomplished. We've got the angles on there. This one actually worked out to be about 23 degrees. This angle here along the front. And these are probably a little bit less, or maybe a little bit more than 30 degrees now, since I had to do some hand planing to them. But the next thing to do is to create this recess so that the hex key, the plane iron, can recess past this surface of the plane. Also, it'll be time to drill holes for some handles, which I have yet to figure out what I'm going to use. But at any rate, this is where we are, and if you don't look too close, you won't see the mistakes. Of course, I'll always know they're there, right? Woodworkers, we always know where our mistakes are. Our eyes go right to them, right? So at any rate, for being what it is, I think it's coming along pretty good. So next thing to do is what I mentioned earlier. So stay tuned. These are the two handles that I'm going to use for my router plane. I went ahead and laid out where I want to drill the holes. The tenon on these handles is actually about, that's a little more than 7/16 in diameter. So I found that if I use the same Forstner bit that I used to drill this hole, it'll fit very, very tight. Not very, very tight, but it'll fit tight enough to where I can put some glue on it, press them in, we'll be good to go. So let's go over to the drill press and take a look at what I've got set up over there. Okay, here at the drill press, what I've got set up is I've got my drill press table tilted to 30 degrees. On that I have a compound cross slide table, which means that it's a table that'll move in both the X and Y direction. Now this seems like a little bit of a complicated setup, and it actually kind of is. It's not something that many woodworkers are actually going to be able to do in their shop. But this was set up, I originally set this up in an attempt to be able to mill these angles here. That didn't work out real well, as you saw, because I ended up using the bandsaw as opposed to using the drill press and this milling setup, and it just it just didn't work out. However, it is going to work out for drilling the holes that I need to drill for the handles on the plane. So I've got this set up. I'm just going to drill a couple holes. I've got a 7/16 inch Forstner bit set up into in the chuck here, and I'm just going to drill one hole on each side, and hopefully they'll fit pretty snug. A little bit of glue and some press fit and should go in, should be all right. So I'm going to drill these holes and see what happens. Okay, got the holes drilled in the base of the plane. The 7/16 inch Forstner bit, and see how these handles fit. Looks like they're going to work out okay. Nice tight fit, a little bit of glue, should be just fine. I'm not going to glue those in yet, obviously, because I still have to create this recess in the back for the plane iron. So that's next. Again, I'm going to use the drill press to remove the bulk of this material, and then I'll clean the rest of it up with a chisel. This doesn't have to be anything really precise, as long as the plane iron that you're going to use is going to build a recess lower than this surface. It'll have to recess below that surface. So at least that's what I think it's going to have to do. I could be blowing smoke out of my butt, but I think that's what's going to happen is when this thing is just at rest and not being used, I think that plane iron wants to build a recess beyond this surface. So that's how I'm going to proceed. Whether right, wrong, indifferent, I'll find out. So that's what's next. Okay, the recess has been cut out, the Allen wrench right here. Okay, that's where the plane iron is going to sit. And I've got, this is actually a 10mm Allen wrench, but it fits in there pretty snug. And I don't know how well you can actually see that, but it is just, I mean, it's so close to the surface. I'm pretty sure that when I put a 3/8 hex key in there and it's got the bottom of it ground to the angle that's needed, I'm sure it's going to be well below the surface here. So I'm not concerned about that. So really the next thing to do is to just, I guess, put the handles on, grind the key, and or grind the blade, and that'll be that. Another thing I'm going to do is I thought about using a knobs that I have here in the shop that I used years ago when I was a machinist. They're a plastic cap pressed onto the head of a 1/4 socket head cap screw, and while it would function, it just really would not look really well. I mean, I'm not going for a showpiece here, but at the same time, I don't think that I want to go that route either. I decided to go a different route with the thumb screw for the router plane. What you see here is what I was talking about earlier. It's just a plastic cap that's been pressed onto this socket head cap screw. It's a 1/4 socket head cap screw. Now to dress this up a little bit, I'm going to recess that up inside this plumbing fitting that I've got. It's a chrome plated fitting, and it's going to recess and it's going to sit down there like that. And then I'm going to use some epoxy and epoxy it in, and see how it turns out. I can still change my mind down the road if I want and try to get a, which I may do, but I don't have the money right now to get that little brass thumb screw, so I'm going to do this and see if it works. And perhaps sometime down the road I'll do something different, but this is what I have on hand, and this is what I got to do. Well, there we have it. All done. I've not put a finish on it yet. I put some paste wax on the bottom, but I haven't really done anything other than that. I've got the iron all ground, and I ended up using a 10 millimeter because that's what I had. It's close enough to 3/8 of an inch, and I don't know how well you can see that, but I tried to get that ground to about a 30-degree angle, and I created a relief here so that nothing but the edge of the blade was exposed, and then I sharpened it by using a series of sandpaper grits and an oil stone, and I've got it sharp enough to where it'll cut paper, and I've got a piece of material set up here in the vise to see how well it's going to do. I've taken some preliminary steps and prepared the material a little bit so that it wouldn't be so difficult to try to get this thing to start working. The knob, I ended up doing what I had said I was going to do. I took one of those plastic cap knobs, it's a 1/4-20 socket head cap screw with a plastic knob pressed onto it that I'd had for years and years and years, and I just took this plumbing fitting, it's just some sort of fitting, I'm not sure what it is, and pressed it down in there and then filled the whole thing with epoxy, and I think it's going to work out alright. So let's take a look at how this is going to work